mainstream entertainment. Ruslan.
Wearing a shirt that says empathy over apathy. And oftentimes when the word empathy is used, it's usually used to consider those people that are going through situations, consider those people that have been victimized, consider those people that have been hurt. And I think empathy is important because it allows us to just try to feel what the other person is feeling in a situation. I think that's good. I think it's important. I think we as a country need to have more empathy. We as people need to have more empathy, more compassion. And I think the more empathy we could have, the more we can consider somebody else's point of view, the better. This is a talk I wanted to highlight. It's a TED Talk. It's called Can a Divided America Heal? And it talks about how polarized we got after the 2016 election, where you had one group, again, calling the other group names. So you had the folks who voted for Trump calling everybody who voted for Hillary a socialist, leftist, and you had everybody who voted for Hillary calling everybody who voted for Trump a racist. Both very close-minded, both very, very polarized. And so I wanted to highlight this. And this talks about how we've gotten more and more polarized, how we've become incapable of even just having conversations with each other and understanding different points of view. And so I want to have empathy. I want us to have empathy over apathy. So if somebody disagrees with you, try to understand how they formed their point of view, how they got in those shoes, how they started believing these things. So let's check out this real clip. I'm going to give you guys some of my thoughts. Again, watch this entire TED Talk. It's only 20 minutes. Kind of divided America.
Are you almost saying that we almost need a new type of empathy? I mean, empathy is traditionally framed as, oh, I feel your pain. You know, I can put myself in your shoes, and we feel, you know, we apply it to the poor, the needy, the suffering. Mm-hmm. Right. We don't usually apply it to people who we feel as other or we're disgusted by or whatever. I mean, what would it look like to build that type of empathy?
Yeah. What if we could extend empathy not to just people who are hurting and people who are poor or victims? What if we could extend empathy to people we consider in our out group? Miles McPherson has a great book called Third Options. I've talked about it extensively on his channel, in groups, out groups. What if we had empathy for people who are in our out group and try to understand how some people make some of the political decisions they made or have some of the ideologies or some of the worldviews that they have? Let's keep watching this.
Well, so I think empathy is a very, very hot topic in psychology, and it's a very popular word on the left in particular. Empathy is a good thing. And empathy for the preferred classes of victims. So it's important to empathize with the groups that we on the left think are so important. So that's easy to do because you get points for that. But empathy really should get you points if you do it when it's hard to do. And I think we had a long, a 50-year period of...
You guys catch that? Empathy should be applauded when it's hard to do. I'll be honest with you guys, okay? It's been hard for me to have empathy historically, not today, but in the past, for people who have voted for Trump. It's been hard for me to have empathy for those people, right? And then I started having those people in my life more. I started hearing them out. I started understanding their point of view. And though I disagree with the political statement they made, because I thought they could have voted third party, they could have not voted at all, I have grown to have a degree of empathy, especially when we talked about the last video in terms of the Scandinavian socialism and taxes going up and why somebody would hold these conservative points of views, how they may have a blind spot in certain areas. It was hard for me to have empathy for those people, but I'm so glad that I'm always working on it, right? I'm always working on it, as well as people on the far left point of view, right? And I have both of these people in my life, like actively in my life. I'm not going to name names, but actively in my life, right? And so let's keep watching.
Of dealing with our race problems and legal discrimination. And that was our top priority for a long time, and it still is important. But I think this year, I'm hoping it will make people see that we have an existential threat on our hands. Our left-right divide, I believe, is by far the most important divide we face. We still have issues about race and gender and LGBT, but this is the urgent need of the next 50 years. And things aren't going to get better on their own. So we're going to need to do a lot of institutional reforms, and we could talk about that, but that's like a whole long, wonky conversation. But I think it starts with people realizing that this is a turning point. And yes, we need a new kind of empathy. We need to realize this is what our country needs, and this is what you need. If you don't want to spend, raise your hand if you want to spend the next 4 years as angry and worried as you've been for the last year. Raise your hand, right? So, if you want to escape from this, read Buddha, read Jesus, read Marcus Aurelius. I mean, they have all kinds of great advice for how to sort of, drop the fear, reframe things, stop seeing other people as your enemy. So there's a lot of guidance in ancient wisdom for this kind of empathy.
I love that. I think it's so key. I think it's so important, so that we could have that empathy for people who are other, and try to put ourselves in their shoes and try to understand why they hold some of the views they have. And I absolutely recommend Jesus in terms of, some of these ancient scribes and loving your enemy as yourself, and right, so on and so forth. So is empathy something that you are good at? Is this something you're pressing into? Are you losing relationships with family over politics? Are you losing relationships with close friends you've known forever over politics, over social issues, right? Listen, we can disagree about all kinds of different things, right? We could disagree about what's best for people, what's the best policies, right? But we should never disagree, and this is an Andy Stanley quote, we should never disagree that what's best for people is what's best. Okay, we can disagree on what's best for people, which policies are best for people, which social policies, political policies, tax policies are best for people, but we should never disagree that what's best for people is what's best, right? That ultimately our hearts should be, how can we help more people? How can we be more empathetic? How can we love people better? How can we lay down our lives? How can we love our enemies? How can we come together and meet in the middle and understand people's points of views? And by the way, people who are on the fringes, like people that are on the far left and far right, they didn't happen in a vacuum. Their environment, their community, some type of life experience, something led them to that position that now they're so deep in that echo chamber. So deep in that echo chamber. And there's probably some of you guys that are watching this that like all you consume is Fox News and Ben Shapiro, and you think you're just so right. But are you righteous? Right? You could be right and be not righteous. You could be right, and this is a quote from KJ52, but not be restored or not be redeemed. Right? Move towards restoration. Move towards righteousness. Not self-righteousness. Not being right. You guys see what I'm saying? So, I want you guys to consider this. Like, consider who you extend empathy to. Consider who you extend empathy to. Is it just the disenfranchised? Because they need our empathy. Yes, we need to care for the least of these. Yes, we need to care for the orphans. Yes, we need to care for all those people. But it's important for us to have empathy for a lot of people. And by the way, yes, there are people here from the far left and the far right. Just read the comments section sometimes. So if there's any, and by and large, I tend to ban and block a lot of people. If you're coming in the comments or in the chat being combative, being nasty, you're gone. Like I got a zero tolerance. But if you're legitimately trying to understand somebody else's point of view and you're trying to have a conversation, I tend to let those go. So anyway, I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about this concept of a different kind of empathy?
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.